You are Locked On Warriors Postcast, part of Locked On Sports San Francisco on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yo, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Locked On Warriors Postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. You may know me as the former producer for the Murph and Mac Morning Show on KMBR. The Golden State Warriors tonight the Warriors tried to keep pace with the Pacers today and absolutely could not. Showed great effort and energy tonight, but ultimately did not have the scoring to keep pace with the Indiana Pacers, falling 108-96. Despite missing Steph Curry, Draymond Green, GP2, Brandin Podziemski, Jonathan Kuminga, and Andrew Wiggins, the Golden State Warriors kept the game close and competed well with contributions from every player on the roster. And even though you don't like the result, you have to like the effort from the Golden State Warriors young players. And we'll break it all down. But first, I want to thank all of you for watching us on the Locked On Warriors. Watching us on the Locked On Sports San Francisco YouTube channel and listening on the Locked On Warriors podcast feed. I'm just getting this whole intro messed up, man. I do this every day, and I somehow just messing it up all over the place. But regardless, thank you guys for tuning in. And thanks also for listening on the Locked On Warriors podcast feed, making us your first listen following these Dubs games. Make sure to check out the Locked On Warriors Daily Show for more in-depth coverage. Charlie Walter does a great job. And promise we'll keep the wheels on for the rest of the show, or at least we'll try to. But tonight, the show kind of got off to the same start as the Warriors did tonight. Just not the best, but also, they kind of hung tough in that first quarter. That game had an opportunity to really get away from the Warriors in this first quarter. We've seen them lose so many games in this first quarter this season, and surprisingly, this was not one of them. I fully expected the Warriors, missing virtually everybody who contributes to this team in a meaningful way, to just not have really much of an effort tonight. I thought they were going to get blown out by the Pacers, especially considering that the Warriors had a really hard time scoring over 100 points in the last 4 games. They've failed to reach 103 of their last 4 games, and they've lost all 3 of those games. The only one that they won was the one where they crested the 100-point mark. So take that or leave it for what you will. But tonight just did not go away in that first half, or really even in the third quarter. The Warriors hung tough with this one until kind of late in that fourth. With about 3-4 minutes left, it kind of became out of reach, insurmountable for the Warriors. A Benedict Mathurin 3, to me, kind of felt like the end of the Warriors' real any chance at them coming back and winning in this one. But you really have to like that every single guy on this roster gave you meaningful minutes tonight. Virtually everybody gave you something. The low scorer was Kevon Looney, but you saw what he was doing if you watched this game in the post, battling for those rebounds against, hopefully future Warrior Miles Turner. I would love if Miles Turner came to the Warriors in the offseason. We will see what happens with that. A topic for another day, probably a topic for the Locked On Warriors Daily Show. Maybe Charlie will get into that going forward. But tonight, kind of a homecoming for 2 different guys in Indiana. Buddy Hield, who obviously used to play there, and TJD, who grew up in Indiana, played at the University of Indiana, was a Hoosier for 4 years. And TJD, he had an okay night, but he, again, battling tough for those rebounds. I wanted to see him scoring more on the interior of this Pacers defense, but Miles Turner is a really, really, really tough matchup. So I thought TJD, all in all, had a decent night with 9 points and 10 boards, 3 offensive rebounds. Again, TJD continues to give the Warriors extra possessions, but the problem tonight was not the possessions. The Warriors actually win the possession battle, get off more shot attempts than the Indiana Pacers. It was a matter of execution. The Warriors only made 41% of their shots, and the Pacers made 53% of them. So that is the game right there. And that's been the story for the Warriors really this whole season, is the lack of shot making on this roster. And obviously tonight, you look at the starting lineup: Kyle Anderson, Lindy Waters, Dennis Schroeder, Buddy Hield, Trace Jackson Davis. That does not get me very excited. I don't think it's going to get any Warriors fans very excited either. Where's the scoring coming from? Buddy Hield, 17 points. The number's nice, but then you look at how he got there on 19 shots. That's not a very efficient 17 points, and 3 of 12 from beyond the arc. Man, this guy, the Warriors kind of go as Buddy goes. If he has a good game, the Warriors have a good chance to win. If he's not on top of it, then the Warriors aren't winning. And in recent weeks, to start the season, it was great. Buddy came out just firing. Really seemed to fit like a glove with this Warriors offense and what they wanted to do. And ever since the De'Anthony Melton injury, Buddy Hield has really fallen off the face of the earth. I mean, three-point shooting seems to be really hard for him all of a sudden, which is wild because that's kind of the one thing that you could rely on Buddy, was that he would become, he would have games where he would go, 0 for 6 from deep, but then he'd have games where he would go 5 for 7. So you expect the streakiness to be there. The problem is we've had all these lows with Buddy recently, and we haven't had any of the highs. So we'll see if Buddy runs into a hot streak here sooner or later. But I mean, you got to have more from just more talent on this roster. There's nobody really that you can hope to give you more on this roster. Guy Santos has been playing out of his mind these last 2 days, playing his cojones off. I mean, 24 minutes again from Guy, 20 plus minutes last night, and another double-digit scoring game for Guy Santos. This guy has stepped up in a massive, massive way, which kind of poses the question, do you want more Guy Santos minutes? And I'm not being facetious at all. We'll get into that a little bit later on in the show. But tonight, the one guy who really, stood out to me, obviously, was Pat Spencer with his career high 17 points in just 20 minutes on 12 shots. This guy gave the Warriors a big, big, big lift off the bench and kind of was one of the just many pieces that really helped keep the Warriors in this game. But that's the problem, is you needed all of these different guys. You needed 17 points from Pat Spencer. And this is kind of like what we talked about last night. You needed to rely on guys like Lindy Waters, on Dennis Schroeder, on Pat Spencer, on Guy Santos, on guys like that, Buddy Hield, in order to win games. And none of those names are reliable names. None of those guys are guys where you can come into the gym every night and that dude can give you 20 if you need it. None of those guys can do that. And maybe they can piecemeal it together. That was the hope at the beginning of the season, right? Like the strength in numbers type of philosophy where you had, with De'Anthony Melton in the all the way that the second unit was playing together with Melt running the point and kind of orchestrating things. It was really, really, really solid. But it just, without him on that second unit, it's a big loss, man. Like, there's no true second point guard on this team. And tonight with Steph out, there wasn't a true single 1 point guard on this team. So that's an issue for the Warriors. I mean, you don't have ball handling. You don't have shooting. What do you have on offense? Yeah, you have some guys who can make some nice set shots, and TJD can get a little bit going in the pick and roll game with Dennis Schroeder. And again, that's something I keep waiting to see more of from these two, and we keep not seeing it. And tonight seemed like the perfect night to get that going, because you weren't going to have – what else was the offensive game plan? I'm just wondering what they worked on, or what they even talked about in team meetings coming into this game tonight. Like, what was the Warriors' plan offensively? I really don't know. So I thought that it was going to be Dennis Schroeder and TJD in the high pick and roll. We didn't really see that very much at all. We saw a lot of Buddy Hield just jacking up shots. The Warriors thankfully they played good defense tonight, and the Pacers also just missed a bunch of open threes. The Pacers ended up shooting 33%, only 9 3-pointers for the Pacers. Warriors actually made 10 3-pointers, so on 26%, but they made one more than the Pacers, and it was that's kind of what kept them around, is that the Pacers didn't really get that three ball going and run away with this one at all. But at the end of the day, even just looking at the box score, 0 Warriors with 20 plus points, 3 different Pacers with 20 plus points. And that's very telling. The starting lineup for the Pacers just absolutely dominated the starters for the Warriors, and you kind of expected that coming in. But the one thing that you can kind of hang your hat on if you're the Warriors is that you didn't give up, and it was the back end of a back-to-back. And you don't want moral victories. You fall back to 19-19. You're at 500. The expectations of this franchise is not moral victories. The expectation of this franchise is wins, is getting to the postseason, and is making a postseason run, not just getting there, being championship contenders. That is the expectation for the Golden State Warriors as a franchise, not for this roster, but from the franchise perspective. That's where they believe they should be every single year. And right now, I mean, we'll go into this a little bit later on, but I mean, do you believe that they're a playoff team, a playoff caliber team, or even a play-in caliber team? Let me know in the comments, and we'll get into it. But I mean, the Warriors tonight, at least as I was saying, you got some effort from everybody on this roster, really. I mean, Quentin Post, Guy Santos, Moses Moody, Pat Spencer, Kevon Looney, all these dudes who get very inconsistent playing time, or in Quentin Post's case, virtually no playing time. These guys all seemed pretty ready to come into the game. They all seemed Like the moment wasn't too big. They all had contributions. Quinton Post, 6 points in 7 minutes. I'm not saying this guy is going to be someone that you can rely on or even give you, meaningful minutes in the future. But he's, it's a little bit of something. Like they got TJD in the second round around the same spot where they drafted Quinton Post just a couple years ago. And now Quinton Post, they get him in the most recent draft. Maybe he's someone that can give you some size down low. He didn't look unplayable. He didn't look lost. So that's a good thing. The Warriors just have at least another big body that they can run out there if they need to. Not that, they utilize these big guys as much as they should, but, life, such as life. Maybe Quinton Post, since he does have a 3-ball, can find a little bit of a pick and pop spot on this roster as the season goes on. That'll be a kind of a little interesting niche thing to watch if you're a Warriors fan. But hey, the rest of this team, I do really like the effort that we saw from virtually everybody on this roster. And one thing I was a little disappointed, I will say, Moses Moody, this is an opportunity for Moses Moody to earn some more playing time and to really show that he can step up into more of a prolific scoring role. Tonight, just 3 of 11 from the field, 1 for 5 from the floor. Not the best night for Moses Moody, 7 total points. We got more to talk about from this game besides just the Warriors' solid effort tonight. But, we just mentioned it. Is this a playoff caliber team? Do you think that this team has what it takes to even get to the play-in tournament at this point? Let me know in the comments, and we'll get into it next on the Locked On Warriors postcast. Today's show is sponsored by TurboTax. TurboTax, and this is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Man, are you tired of the endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about your taxes? Well, now that's a thing of the past. You see, taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can help you get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers, no more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you've got one form or 20, TurboTax experts give your taxes their undivided attention while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to lift a finger, but you'll get the peace of mind knowing your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off your plate so you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Welcome back to the Locked On Warriors postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel, and tonight, the Warriors 108-96 loss to the Indiana Pacers. Not the best end result, but you do kind of like the effort from some of these down the roster players. But at the end of the day, the goal for this franchise is to reach the postseason. Is not just to reach the postseason, but have a run in the playoffs, become championship contenders. And right now, personally, I don't think that this team has a snowball's chance in hell at doing anything in the postseason or even in the play-in tournament. The Warriors right now look like if they made the play-in, they're a one game out. Like get the idea of them even being like the 7 or the 8 seed out of your head. They are not going to have the luxury of being able to lose one game and maybe win one later on to get into the postseason. That's not going to happen the way that this team has been playing. You look at the teams that are ahead of them in the playoffs currently in the West, and there's not a single team that I think the Warriors are actually better than. I said all offseason long, and a lot of people thought I was crazy. The Spurs getting Chris Paul was a big deal for Wemby's development and could unlock him into being that MVP type candidate that he's inevitably going to become. That could just expedite the process. But that's a problem for the Warriors more so than just the fact that the Spurs are in the West and that you got to play them a couple times a year. But now the Spurs are probably looking like they're a better team than the Warriors. The Warriors barely snuck into the play-in last year. You don't need any more young teams getting better than you while you're not adding anything of real importance to your roster. Like the Warriors took some swings this offseason and they missed on a lot of guys. Paul George, Lauri Markkanen. If you had either one of those guys on this roster, I know Paul George hasn't had the best year in Philly, but my God, it would be better than what we're seeing now. This team does not look like they're going to go anywhere near the postseason. I would not be surprised at this point if the Warriors completely miss the play-in tournament. as a whole. Like this team does not look very good, even when you have a night where you're happy with the contributions from all these different guys on the roster that you don't expect much from, like Pat Spencer, like Quentin Post, like Guy Santos, and you get some contributions from those guys more so than you would expect, and you still lose to a team like the Indiana Pacers. And granted, the Pacers are pretty good right now. They've won 5 in a row, 12 of their last 15. They are a hot team out there in the East. Tyrese Halliburton is every bit as good as advertised. That guy's phenomenal. But I mean, still, at the end of the day, this roster does not have what it takes to compete, even with the team who isn't really even picked to go the distance in the East. I mean, does anybody have the Indiana Pacers at the top of the Eastern Conference? I know I don't. I mean, are they even close to the Cavs or Boston? I don't think so. And the Warriors, if you're hoping that they can maybe be a playoff caliber team, well, you can't even beat a team that's in the middle of the pack in the Eastern Conference and middle of pack as far as playoff teams go. So, I mean, you start to think about how they match up against teams in the West where things are much tougher as far as top end level talent and competition. I mean, they don't have a chance, man. Like, this team desperately needs to shake things up. It's so apparent and obvious to me every single time I watch this team, and I say it every single damn night. I'm getting tired of just repeating myself, and I wish that Mike Dunleavy would kind of get tired of watching the same thing too out there on the court. He said that he and Steve Kerr needed about a month to evaluate this roster. That was right before the Jonathan Kuminga injury. You don't need much more time, man. Look at what this is. And I'm not saying that tonight should be a major indicator of the fact that the Warriors need to make a trade. I mean, you're missing 6 of your top 8 minutes guys. You're going to lose that game. I mean, you're just kind of happy you didn't get blown out. But when you're missing Steph, Draymond, Wiggs, Kuminga, Brandin Podziemski, like all these different guys, Gary Payton II, you're going to miss out on a lot of different scoring plays. And I mean, you're missing a lot of defense there too. You just don't have enough talent-wise to really have guys go down with injuries for any significant length of time at this point in the season. I mean, how much longer can you just kind of hope to middle around 500 without falling off the map completely? I mean, the Warriors have picked up their pace just a little bit, their win pace just a little bit since really falling off the face of the earth a couple of weeks ago, and they've been able to just kind of tread water around 500, and that's not going to be enough. You need to start gaining some ground, especially as the schedule is getting a little bit easier. I mean, next up you get the Raptors, and that's a winnable game if you can get some of these guys back. But still, the Warriors need to start winning games. I mean, you don't want to enter the second part of the season making up ground. That's exactly what they did last year. And you saw what the solution was, or not the solution, but the end result. You saw that the Warriors barely got into the play-in tournament. I mean, it took down to the last couple days of the season, and then they get bounced in the first game. Like, I mean, I'm not interested in watching the Warriors lose in the play-in tournament for a second year in a row. It's just not what I want to do. And maybe I'm just going to come across as a selfish, greedy Warriors fan, because that's all that the Warriors have known in the last decade or so is postseason success. But I mean, this isn't going to cut it. I mean, you're looking at the guys running around out there, and it's a bunch of random journeymen from all across the NBA just mishmashed together on this roster. And yeah, maybe you can find a couple of these guys to fill out some holes that you have, and they can, play above their what you've seen them do in other places, play above expectations. But at the end of the day, you got to have a superstar. Like, name a team in the NBA that does not have a superstar and is good. And I know that you got Steph Curry, but you need another one. Like, you need multiple. You can't just have one guy. Like, name a team with just one dominant star that is any good in the NBA, and you can't. I mean, the Warriors kind of feel a lot like, the Charlotte Hornets in a sense. Like, I mean, it's different in the sense of Curry's on the back end of his career and LaMelo's just starting his. But I mean, they feel the same. Like, one team both teams just have one guy to kind of do it all. And if that one guy doesn't go absolutely crazy bonkers, you're going to lose. And even if he doesn't get enough help, you're still going to lose too. So the Warriors, to me right now, absolutely not a playoff team, not even a play-in team. I don't think. I don't think that they're going to be able to hold down that 10 seed. I don't think that they're going to be able to keep off the Phoenix Suns for the rest of the year. And I do think that ultimately it's more likely that the Suns are going to make a trade to improve that roster at the deadline, than it is for the Warriors to make a trade to improve the roster at the deadline. The Warriors do not have a ton of cap space to be flexible with, and it's going to be a mess if they go over that second apron, or if they go over that first apron. And we don't need to get into all that number stuff. One, because I'm not very good with numbers, and two, because it's boring. But for money reasons, it would not make sense for the Warriors to go and really bring in a big high dollar guy. I mean, yeah, you're going to match contracts and stuff, but you'll still, if you end up going over that apron and you get penalized, it's going to hurt the Warriors going into next year as well. You absolutely do not want that. So you have to figure out how to maneuver and make this team better without giving up a whole heck of a lot. And that really relies on a team out there taking Andrew Wiggins. And what's he going to get you back at this point? I mean, it's becoming increasingly unlikely that the Warriors are going to make a super splashy, significant trade. We keep talking about Jimmy Butler almost every damn day. And I mean, it's just seemingly very unlikely, very, very, very unlikely. The longer and longer we get into this season, the closer we get to the deadline, I just don't see it. I don't see it. So the Warriors, I don't know if help is coming. I really don't know. I mean, I think their best bet right now is just to get healthy. And I mean, that's kind of a scary situation, because even if they are fully healthy, this team is maybe a ninth seed at best. So the Warriors have a lot of work to do, a lot of uphill climbing to do. And it seems like this season, the longer it goes on, it's just going to be another one that's marred in mediocrity. Steph Curry has said multiple times over the last year and a half, season and a half, how average this team is, how painful it is. I mean, you look at just what was it, a couple days ago when Steph was, just dejected, meandering, looking lost, just wandering around Chase Center. Like, genuinely made me sad to watch Steph just wandering around aimlessly out there. And I mean, this is in his own building. I mean, and he's just looking dejected, like just so defeated. And it's such a stark contrast to what we've seen, the joy that we've seen him play with in his career in years past. And you just don't see a whole lot of that right now. Steph talked about that, maybe a week or two ago, saying that the Warriors just aren't playing with very much joy right now. And they're not. And but it's hard to find joy when you're this inconsistent, when you're losing games as much as the Warriors have been in recent weeks. It's really hard to find joy playing the game of basketball when the ball isn't going in the damn hoop on your open shots. So the Warriors, if they want to play with some more joy, maybe you got to execute those open shots a little bit better. But right now, I don't know where that help is coming from. And to me, that says that this Warriors team is absolutely doomed when it comes to the playoffs, the play-in, or anything of the like. I don't think the Warriors have a snowball's chance in hell of making noise in the postseason. Absolutely not. Like, just 0% chance. But of even getting to the postseason, I mean, their hopes are getting smaller and smaller every single day. I do not think that this team ultimately will have what it takes to close it out. We've seen how they close out games. Not very well. Like, they are not really good at making these comebacks in these fourth quarters. And I think that kind of gives you the identity of this team. Like, they're going to give you some fight. They're going to give you some heart. They don't lack that entirely, but it's just the talent. The talent is not there. And when you don't have enough talent in the NBA, it's going to eventually come and bite you. Like, you can have some nice moments, some nice runs, but you got to have the horses. And right now, the Warriors definitely do not have the horses. Stick with us on the Locked On Warriors postcast. We got more to get into on the other side. Guy Santos, I teased this earlier. Guy Santos has been playing really well these last couple games. Do you want to see more minutes from him? I mean, this would have been a crazy question to ask earlier in the season, or virtually at any point in time in Guy Santos' career up until these last two games. Is this just a circumstance thing, or is Guy someone that can actually handle a little bit of uptick in his minutes and his production? Let's talk about that next on the Locked On Warriors postcast. Today's show is sponsored by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. And for me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Warriors postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. Tonight, the Warriors, nice effort, but just not enough in the tank, losing on the back end of the back-to-back to the Indiana Pacers, 108-96. Because it was the back end of the back-to-back, no Steph, no Draymond, and a little bit of a switch up from what we've seen lately. They've been playing the front ends, playing the back ends, but sitting the front ends. On this series, this road trip, the Warriors kind of switched that up. Had them play the first game of the roadie and sit the second one against the Pacers. Kind of like the decision. I think that that Detroit game was there for the taking if Steph and Draymond play. If they played in this game, you still run the risk of losing this game tonight because the rest of the team could have been tired off the back end of the back-to-back. That's kind of what we saw in the last situation where Steph looked fresh, had 30-plus on the back end of the back-to-back, but the rest of the Warriors did not look very good. So tonight, because they don't play, no Wiggins either, no Jonathan Kuminga still, no GP2, no Brandin Podziemski, all different sorts of Warriors missing time in this one. So it was an all-hands-on-deck kind of game. So everyone was getting minutes. We talked about Pat Spencer and his 17 points in 20 minutes, and that was really nice to see from him. The Heisman, essentially the Heisman Trophy winner. It's a different name for college lacrosse a couple of years ago. And then he played 1 year at Northwestern, ends up in the Warriors G League, and then, fighting his way onto this roster, earning some playing time with virtually no other real point guard out there. And gave you some production tonight. Not the only guy, though. Guy Santos, 24 minutes, 11 points. And this is the second night in a row that Guy has given you double figures. And the second night in a row that three-point shot has looked pretty good. And, I mean, one thing the Warriors really need right now more than anything is three-point shooting. Like this team, I mean, it's so weird to live in a world where the Warriors can't shoot threes. I don't want to live in a world anymore where the Warriors can't shoot threes. So to me, that means we got to get Guy Santos some more minutes. And that's crazy talk, but it's also not at the same time. Like Guy Santos, I think has shown you enough. And I know it was circumstantial in these last two games, but he's shown you what he's got. And honestly, I like it, man. Like the effort, the offensive rebounding, the extra possessions. He had another couple steals tonight and finding some assists out there as well. I mean, he's kind of like a do-it-all stat stuffer type guy out there. Like there isn't a single thing that Guy Santos really struggles with, it seems like. I mean, I don't want him handling the ball like at the point, but I mean, that shot looks nice from deep. I mean, it's something he's clearly worked on a lot since being drafted in the second round a couple years ago. But the body, like his body looks so physically different than when the Warriors drafted him. Did not look like an NBA body, but now he does. And he looks like he's, ready to give you some production. 4 or 5 from the field, 24 minutes, as I said. And he also led the Warriors in plus-minus with +9. I think that Guy Santos really has earned himself a couple extra minutes. I'm not saying play the guy 20-plus minutes a night. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I think that he can give you some minutes off the bench. And if some of these other guys that, are kind of ahead of him in the rotation on the bench aren't scoring, if the shot's not falling, throw Guy out there. See if he's got it that night. See if the shot is running it in fifth gear. See if he's stroking him from deep. If he is, leave him in there and let him have some run. At this point, you got to play the hot hand. If you're Steve Kerr, you cannot continue to be satisfied with 3 of 12 from deep from Buddy Hield, or 1 of 6 from deep from Dennis Schroeder. Schroeder's got to play for other obvious reasons. He's got to be the point guard of this team, especially when Steph is out. But I really think that Guy Santos should get some more playing time. Where else are you going to look at this point? You got to try something different if you're the Warriors. And maybe Guy Santos gives you a little bit of a lift. But again, nothing on this roster is going to really change the trajectory of where this team is headed. And where that is, the trajectory of this team right now is straight to Cancun after the regular season. They do not look like a postseason team or even a play-in team to me at this point. We'll see what happens when Kuminga comes back. Maybe he just continues to develop and we see him push that scoring average up towards 20 or over 20 points a game for the season. But that would take a Herculean effort from Jonathan Kuminga, I think, in order to change the outcome of this Warriors season. That's your only hope if you're a Warriors fan, is that Jonathan Kuminga becomes the best version of himself when he comes back from this injury. We'll see what happens as time goes on. More and more unlikely, I think, that the Warriors actually get a trade done. I think what you see is what you're going to get with this team, and that's a 500 team, or maybe even a little bit worse than that. So we'll see what happens as this road trip rolls on. Warriors couple days off before heading to Toronto on the 13th. So a couple days rest, and they'll get back at it in Toronto. That's all the time that we got for you guys today here on the Locked On Warriors Postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. We'll see you next time. Peace.